Hey, another week, another email design podcast where you can come in, get your latest news on all things email design, development, and marketing. We are your hosts. I'm Kevin Mandeville.
And I'm Jason Rodriguez.
And we got a lot to cover today, and a bit of news. This seems to be a good episode about news, Jason. So what do we got on your end to kick things off with?
Yeah, so the first little bit of news, which I feel like is actually kind of huge industry news, MailChimp, buried in this blog post about their new pop-up form options for signups, they actually have a little bit of news that they're going to be finally offering single opt-in as a method for opting into email lists, which is kind of massive because MailChimp for the longest time since its inception has been double opt-in only. So there's been a lot of talk on Twitter, on certain email lists about the ramifications of a move like this. Just because it's, MailChimp is one of the biggest email service providers, and moving to single opt-in definitely comes with some concerns, perhaps, about bots signing up for your lists, not having as clean of lists because you don't have that double opt-in method in play anymore. So kind of curious to see them finally doing this. I know it's been, they mentioned it too, it's been a requested feature from a lot of customers. It's one of the reasons why I use a different ESP because I'm not a huge fan of double opt-in, at least for the list size I typically deal with, but companies with much larger lists like that double opt-in method because it helps keep their lists clean. But it's really interesting to see somebody as big as MailChimp now embracing single opt-in for their email lists.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's big news because, MailChimp, arguably by volume, one of the biggest ESPs out there. And yeah, they've always traditionally sort of had the double opt-in. I'm interested to see what, if any, type of impact this will have on deliverability for the industry at large, because I think MailChimp has the type of reach to really make any type of impact there. We had Chad on the podcast a couple of podcasts ago. I think it was number 78. Talked about the state of email deliverability, and I think one of the surprising things was just how little double opt-in is really being used. Yeah. Or not necessarily just how much it's being used, but how much it's not necessarily increasing the quality for people in terms of their lists. So I think that was an interesting finding from that report that he did. And so I'm interested to see, maybe MailChimp has more data and research on a lot of this stuff than any of us. They might be just seeing, hey, maybe it's really not helping, so let's just not put as much of a barrier on it. And I think it's one of those things from my perspective. I'm a fan of double opt-in personally, just you just get the higher quality list, but I always think it has to be a healthy mix, and we talked about that on the podcast. So definitely, I recommend checking out the one we did with Chad because we do believe that's sort of the best approach. It's a mix. There's different use cases for it. But yeah, I'm interested to see what impact this will have. I'm sure there's a lot of customers, especially on the e-commerce revenue side, who are really happy about this because
definitely.
It probably is going to have a huge impact for them more than anybody else.
Yep, and it's interesting to see MailChimp now pushing this pop-up method. I know there's a lot of people that kind of hate that type of modal pop-up, but they did mention, they saw something about like a 60% increase in signups with that pop-up form, and especially e-commerce. Yeah, it's kind of like a necessity on your website these days. So it's cool to see them, pushing different form types and now embracing single opt-in as well. So if you are a MailChimp customer, you can start using those pop-up forms in your account. That single opt-in is available now, but it's going to be available for the rest of MailChimp's forms too on October 31st. So they're embracing it wholeheartedly at the end of the month here. So it'll be interesting to kind of follow us along and see if there's any wider repercussions throughout the industry.
Yep. Some other news. So AOL, their Alto mail app, which they debuted a couple years ago, actually at the Inbox Love conference, it is going to come to an end. So RIP to Alto Mail. It is going to be taken off the App Store starting November 9th, so it won't be able to be downloaded. And then they're going to discontinue complete support on December 10th. So, Alto had a really good run. It really kind of innovated in a few ways. You see a lot of what Inbox by Gmail is doing. Definitely sort of influenced by Alto Mail. I think that'll probably be Alto Mail's legacy. It was a really nice email app, very well designed. I think they were doing a lot of smart things that, with their cards and things like that. It just was never able to ever generate a lot of market share, enough momentum to get a lot of people using it and sustain it. Based off Twitter activity, we've seen Marcel, who's sort of the core product manager of Alto, sort of the key team leader. The team of Alto isn't going anywhere, so they're going to be going under sort of that Oath umbrella. So I'm interested to see what comes next, and what does this mean for the Yahoo Mail app now? What does this mean just sort of for AOL Mail and Yahoo Mail webmails in general as a transition to sort of this Oath brand happens? I'm curious to see what else may come from this, because I feel like it's only one piece to what the overall strategy may be. I think there might be bigger changes coming potentially.
Yeah, and that'd be really cool. It's sad to see Alto go away, but it's great to see the team there, especially because, I know based on your interactions with them, they were really responsive to understanding email designers' complaints and getting fixes in really quickly to Alto, specifically around, I think, responsive support, media query support when it first shipped. So hopefully they keep that mentality going with, Yahoo and AOL or Oathmail, and stay open to the email marketing industry's, our requests and stuff out of an email client, and keep improving those email clients, even if Alto is dead.
Yeah, it's bittersweet because it is it's one of the better rendering email clients. It's always good news for us to have less fragmentation. So there's that. You can't be too disappointed about that. But the fact that we had to lose the rendering of this one hurts a little. We would have liked to have lost something else.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Would have liked to have seen Yahoo Mail app just be killed instead.
That would have been nice. Yeah, we can always dream. All right, moving on. I think a lot of email geeks are going to be really excited about this article. It was published by Courtney Fantinato, who is a friend of the podcast, friend of Litmus, and has spoken at Litmus Live. She wrote up this really comprehensive overview of what she talked about at Litmus Live this past year, which is correcting Outlook DPI scaling issues. So I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with the rendering issues that are a result of Outlook's DPI scaling, which essentially results from things like pixel values in the width and height attributes of like images remaining pixels, whereas other pixel values in like fonts and layouts turn into points, and it just kind of magnify certain parts of your email while other parts don't get magnified or zoomed in on, and just cause all these layout issues. So there's always tons of questions on like the Litmus community, on Twitter, on Email Geek Slack channel about how to fix these issues. So Courtney took the time to write up this super, super in-depth overview of how to exactly address all of those issues. So it's essentially, adding an XML namespace to your HTML tag that's geared towards Microsoft Office, correcting the DPI for your images, using CSS instead of HTML attributes for things like widths. So just a couple of these techniques. She even breaks down how to account for Outlook DPI scaling issues in hybrid emails, how to address things like Retina images. A little bit long, but so in depth that you will come away, knowing all you need to do to account for those Outlook DPI scaling issues. So you should absolutely check it out. It's a huge resource.
Yeah, this is helpful for me because I'm somebody who just kind of ignores the high DPI scaling.
I feel like we have our layouts tend to be pretty robust, so when problems do break, it doesn't look that bad, but I know a lot of other people have huge issues with this.
Yeah, ours sort of look like the ones in the examples in the article, to where the spacing just might get changed a little bit, but the actual like core structure still stays
not a
intact.
Big deal.
But but some people, some layouts, sometimes if we do like, especially multi-column, more complex ones, it gets like progressively worse and worse. But this is super helpful because this is something I typically ignore, but now that I sort of know what to do here, and this is even better than the community resources we've had before, I think it puts it in a nice, easy to digest format to go and just implement at least some of these things. Probably not going to still worry about it too much,
same
especially
here.
because we don't because we don't get too many complaints about it ourselves, but I know for other people, it's a big deal. And it is just a nice accessibility enhancement to be able to design for this view. So, one of the nice things about this is we do have the 120 DPI available to test inside of Litmus. So Litmus, we work for Litmus. Litmus is basically email testing and analytics platform. You can test your email we have over 80 email clients now. It's crazy. I think we're almost at like 90.
I think we're at 89 right now.
89 right
when
now.
I looked yesterday, we were at 89.
So you can test it in all the popular email clients, everything from Outlook to Gmail, iPhone, and more, whatever you need, even international webmails. We pretty much have it covered. And one of those is the Outlook 120 DPI. So you can see what it looks like in that view if it's ever janked or borked and you need to sort of troubleshoot and fix with this. So we have, that client and a whole bunch of more clients. So you can make sure your email's looking how you expect it to look when it goes to your subscribers, that you don't send a broken email. There's nothing worse than that. And we have this great tool builder here, which I'm showing off, that you can iteratively test and troubleshoot and sort of preview all the different screenshots. So it's a really iterative platform to test along. We also have things like checklists that'll check your links, your images, your tracking, making sure none of that's broken either, so that when it goes out the door, you have full confidence that it's looking and behaving exactly as you expect. So just go to litmus.com/giftcard and input the coupon code podcast to get a free 14-day trial of Litmus. You can give this a spin and see how it works out for you. I mean, it's definitely the number one preferred testing tool for email geeks out there.
All right, we're going to break up some of this news with a couple of cool articles that are just going over some techniques and kind of workflow stuff. The first one is from the folks over at EDM Designer. So they've been writing up a ton of articles recently on, coding practices, different techniques and hacks, and most importantly for this discussion, talking about the different tools and workflows that email designers can use. So they actually released 3 of their own tools that might be of interest to some of you. The first is TextVersion.js, which is an online tool to strip out HTML markup and gives you essentially the plain text version of your email. So you can easily grab that without having to rely on your ESP. You can customize it before loading up to your ESP, something like that. The second one, which I think is pretty handy, is Bulletproof List, which converts things like ordered lists, unordered lists, and list items into that table cell layout that's more compatible across email clients. So I know a lot of people have had issues dealing with lists within emails. So this will allow you to quickly, if you don't want to code up those table cells yourself, you can just put in your unordered list or your ordered list and it'll spit out that code for you, which is pretty cool. And the last one is Bulletproof Line Length, which will take your code that has really long lines, like if you're using a minifier or something like that, and just has a massive line. If you're seeing weird rendering issues in email clients, it might be down to that. So that will break your lines into more manageable lengths. It has, really clear breakpoints at angle brackets, those delimiters we use in CSS, all of that. So it's not going to break your actual code or the rendering, but could help out with those line lengths, which is pretty cool. But all 3 of them are up online. They do a great job explaining how to get started with them, even how to set them up on something like your own server, or install them through NPM, stuff like that. So great tools from EDM Designer. Definitely check that out. We'll put in the show notes.
Yep, nothing to add. Thanks, EDM.
Awesome. Next article is this cool overview from Tori. I don't know how to say your last name. I want to say it's either Pug or Pug. But
I would say Pew.
Pew? All right, there we go.
Yeah, I think so.
She's actually, we talked a little bit about email mentors in the last episode, and she's actually my mentee that I got paired with, which is pretty awesome. So it's funny, like the day I got that notice, she published this article on Medium about creating her own Gulp-based email workflow. She was inspired by Litmus Live 2016. She went there and saw all these great talks, and specifically one about using Gulp to improve your email design development workflow. So she just wrote up this really great overview of how she implemented that for her own emails. So she talks a little bit about, using Nunjucks for their templating language, using data to pull into those email templates, customizing things with variables, all of that good stuff that you get with something like a Gulp-based build tool. So if you are interested in trying to implement something like that for your own emails, you might want to start here and check out how she went about it and get some tips from Tori.
Yeah, I really like the ability in which she was able to incorporate her data files too. So using JSON files and being able, I always feel that trying to preview and test against dynamic content, not necessarily just, like the design, but just the actual data fields, right? Just, dynamic names and, it could be addresses, whatever type of content that might be in an email. It's always hard to preview that. I think it's a widespread issue both in design as well. So design and development, no matter whether it's email or web. So this was a cool approach in which she was able to take and use here. So, and it was cool that she was able to go to Litmus Live and then get the inspiration and make the changes too. So definitely check out the Litmus Live conference. It's best conference of the year for email geeks out there.
All right, I know you have a lot of feelings about this next article, Kevin, so let's look into it.
This article has made the rounds a little bit on Twitter. So this was an article, and actually it's not even one that was written recently. It was just, I guess, just popped up somehow. So this was written by Greg Kogan. The title of the article is "Don't Design Your Emails." He goes into outline his argument as to why design is a barrier to emails. And the key bullet points that he points out is that, email clients are inconsistent in how they render HTML and CSS. Half of all emails are open on mobile, which he points to Litmus as a reference. He complains about having to use tables. There are templates available, but that doesn't eliminate the design work. And the design is one more thing to be approved. It adds, an approval process to it. And so his solution was to, instead of spending any time on doing any of that, just use rich text emails. I mean, he says plain text. I'm just going to use rich text to be able to differentiate when we say rich and plain text. The thing that I don't like about this is that, the example that he uses is a newsletter that went out to 24,000 recipients. And it uses this example to where it is a very, very minimally designed email. Mm-hmm. It is it uses one of MailChimp's just very, very basic ones. So to me, I don't necessarily think that's a good test. Now he points to and alludes to having done a lot more tests, but he always comes down to saying that the rich text email version, it always wins because it's opened by more recipients, and it gets like on average, 3.5 more times clicks. And so, his argument is that rich text emails, they work better. They're less likely to be caught in spam filters, less likely to go into the promotions tab in Gmail. They don't look like advertisements and they feel more personal. So that's his spiel. So my thing is this, less likely to go into promotions tab. I mean, that should not be an issue. That's something, again, that's kind of a myth. Don't worry about going to the promotions tab. That's where you should be. You actually get better deliverability and interaction when users open there. The don't look like advertisements and feel more personal, that's a little bit subjective. So, I mean, that's just a subjective thing. I'm not really going to touch on that here. Less likely to be caught in spam filters. I think yes or no. I don't really think that it's as much a byproduct of HTML versus rich text, but based on your reputation. And when you're dealing with smaller audiences like he included in his article, you're going to be more susceptible to something like that, I think. Now, you should have much higher engagement with smaller audiences to overcome that. But, until you establish some credibility, you might see some more variance there. I'm not a huge expert on deliverability, though. I'm not going to get, too up in arms over that one. But, what he really complains about is, I just think what is due to a lack of education or a lack of resources or a lack of a strong process in terms of complaining about approvals, needing to use tables, inconsistent HTML or CSS. To me, it's just, it's really, email is not that hard when you sit down and take the time to learn it. When you can understand, you can even use all divs for everything except for Outlook. Just use fallback Outlook conditional tables now. 99% of CSS, embedded CSS is supported. 80% support media queries in responsive design. It's just way better than people make it out to be anymore. And it's just due to a lack of full myths, a lack of understanding, in my opinion. And what was my other big one? I'm not completely discounting rich text either. Like, that can be a part of your strategy, absolutely. But you shouldn't make all these catch-all phrases of, only use HTML, email, or only use rich text. I mean, we at Litmus, we use a balance. It depends on the context. If you're looking to get direct replies from users and add that personal touch, like we use those too. Like, we have emails coming from our CEO or our product managers trying to get feedback. Absolutely. You can do rich text ones for instances like that may be more appropriate and perform better. But to say that HTML or designed emails never perform better or more hassle than they were, it's completely misinformed, in my opinion, completely uneducated. So that's sort of like my take on it, Jason.
End rant.
Yeah, really.
No, I totally, absolutely agree. And I do feel like you mentioned earlier, this test seems very disingenuous because the designed email is just so poorly designed. Like, if you put in the effort to make a really compelling design or build like this great email, then I think that would probably outperform something like a plain text email. But yeah, I understand like the resourcing stuff. Like, if you're part of a small team or you don't have those skills, maybe that rich text version is the way to go. But I totally agree that it's down to kind of a lack of education and understanding of email marketing. And the other thing is, like, he talks about it being more personal. I actually feel like it's very weird to get these rich text emails from larger companies, because it's a larger company, it's an advertisement, but then it almost feels like they're trying to trick you into making it feel like it's an email from a colleague or somebody like that, So I feel like that's really disingenuous too a lot of the times. It's almost like when you use that regarding in the subject line or something, it feels like one of those weird tricks that companies try to use to get you to open an email, which I absolutely hate. So I totally agree. I think there's a certain place to use things like this and a certain place to use HTML emails. And like anything in email, it just depends on your audience. It depends on your goals. It depends on so many of these factors that you need to weigh in. So it's really harmful to make huge blanket statements like this.
Yeah, and you can. I understand if you're like a super small startup, say, or a small organization, nonprofit. I understand you're not going to be doing emails like we at Litmus do, these crazy design things. I understand that. So maybe you do use more rich text, or maybe you use just really templated emails from your ESP that you can create, like MailChimp, Campaign Monitor, etc. I totally get that, but I think that's a bit of an edge case. I think where if you have any type of resources or development knowledge, even if you are that web designer stuck doing email, there isn't as much of an excuse for something like that, at least to be able to put something representative together. And yeah, I think it just comes down to you're just completely misinformed, uneducated, to where you've never actually done a proper test, or you've never had a good effort at a truly designed, a well-designed experience, which can lead to, sort of opinions like this, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd love to hear what all of you have to say about this subject. You can hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Email Design Podcast. Weigh in on this discussion because I think it's awesome. I kind of want to start a Litmus community thread or something like that too, and see what people think about something like this.
We should. There's been some good Twitter activity on this.
Yeah. I might dump that in there later and see what everybody's opinion is. But yeah, hit us up. We're hashtag Email Design Podcast. You can go to emaildesignpodcast.com, check out all of our shows, all of the show notes. You can comment on this when we post it come tomorrow. And you can also follow us along on SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes as well. So definitely check out all of our podcast episodes, weigh in on all these discussions, all past discussions. We're happy to hear opinions. We'd love to pull those into the conversation. Yeah, definitely check it out and weigh in and tell us what's on your mind.
All right, so just to round out with some email news, SendGrid is filing for an IPO. So this was an article out in TechCrunch. So SendGrid, they're officially going to go to an IPO. They say in the article, SendGrid, they've processed more than 1 trillion emails, which is, I think, always the nature of transactional email. You're going to have really impressive numbers like this. They say revenue for last year was 79.9 million. I'm not going to go into all the other revenue numbers, but yeah, we're obviously partners with SendGrid. Sort of, we love SendGrid. We love all ESPs, actually. But they're going to be going public. So yeah, hopefully this is something that will help propel the growth of the company and be able to make the service that much better. I think one of the big things too is they're definitely harping on their marketing email component now to where they sort of have their own drag and drop visual type of editor. So they are going to be competing more with, the MailChimps of the world and things like that. And acknowledge that in this article.
Yeah, definitely. It's always good to see, email companies doing well and, hitting these big business goals and stuff like that. It's encouraging for the rest of the industry. Related to that, Emma, which is an ESP based out of Nashville, just sold to Insight Venture Partners from New York. So there's no terms of the deal. Nothing was disclosed monetarily. But it's definitely big news. Emma has been a good size ESP. It's been growing. It's been, doing some really cool things. I feel like their content is fantastic. They put on a great conference, all that stuff. So it's cool to see another company hit this huge business goal. They sold. They're going to be investing even more money and growing as much as they can. The CEO did step down, but it seems like that was always the plan. The CFO, who is Wilford Dillard, is going to be taking over as CEO. It seems like he was kind of groomed for that position. But yeah, really cool to see. I feel like a lot of people are happy in the Nashville area to see one of their bigger software companies get a deal like this closed.
Yeah, and hopefully it leads to good things for the company. Hopefully, again, this is a move that helps propel growth, helps develop the product more. And yeah, hopefully, I always think it's sad when you see founders like that step outside of leadership roles, because it seems like Clint is going to be, I'm not really even sure how much he's going to be involved moving forward now. Yeah. So hopefully that doesn't change the culture too much or whatnot, but obviously very happy to see success of Emma. And they were bootstrapped up until they took their first round in 2015. So sort of a similar story to what Litmus has as a company in terms of being bootstrapped forever and then taking on outside funding. So yeah, sort of congrats, Emma, and hope this means good things coming for you in the future. All right, on to our email of the week. This one is coming from Framer. If you don't know what Framer is, Framer's it's kind of what Builder is to email for what Framer is to mobile app design. They specialize sort of in mobile app prototyping and interactions. And I absolutely love their brand and their design and everything. It's so nice. And they actually just kind of got into the email game. They never sent any emails. And then recently they've been sending some emails, and I'm like, oh, these are really good. And what I love about it is Framer is there's nothing complex about their designs. It's just very simple and minimal and bold. And I think this email really shows this off, where you have just a nice headline, a ton of white space, just the typography. It's simple, but the spacing is well done, and the colors pop, especially down with the sort of hero image, which is below the headline and call to actions there. And I even love just the simple hover effects of the email as well that they have on all the buttons, and even the social icons down at the bottom. I just really think this is clean, simple, and elegant. And one of those things, again, we often say, an email doesn't have to be complex to have a nice design or be effective. And this is a good example of that.
The only thing that would have made it better is if they had gone all rich text, Kevin. That would have been amazing. No, I love this email design. Yeah, like you said, it's clean, it's simple, but it's still really bold. I love that. Yeah, that color, the gradient behind those images down in that hero section. The one thing I do wonder about with emails like this, though, is they don't have any address or anything like that. They just have that unsubscribe link. So I always wonder, I see more and more companies doing this, but I always wonder if that's going to run afoul of CAN spam or Castle or anything like that. But it's really effective in keeping their footer kind of shored up and nice and clean. And I do like how they have those social icons. I'm usually not a fan of having social icons or links in emails, but I think with their brand and the design, it actually works really well. Those icons add just like a nice little visual touch, and actually draw the eye down there, so you might actually click on them.
Yeah, they should definitely be including their address. That is a downside. So note to Framer and everybody else.
Yeah,
include your address. Yeah. If you don't want to go to jail. But I mean, I remember I made that, I was that web designer who got stuck doing email at my first job. Yeah. I made that same mistake when I first got into it. Cause I mean, I was 22, had no idea what I was doing. Right. It was just like, here, kid, do email. And so I was just, doing stuff like this. But yeah, I do love those social footers too, especially for a brand like theirs who relies more on those outlets for what they do, especially for the designer audience. It's pretty sweet. So overall, really nice job for Framer. And if you want to see their emails, definitely check them out. Alrighty, that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. Reminder, you can check out the podcast at emaildesignpodcast.com. All past episodes, this is 81 now, so over 80 episodes to catch up on. All the show notes, everything we talk about, the links, they're all right there for you as resources. Tweet along with the hashtag emaildesignpodcast. Subscribe on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes. Hey, leave us a review if you will, would you? 5 stars, tell us nice things. And free 14-day trial of Litmus. Just go to litmus.com/gift card and input the coupon code podcast. All right, we're back at it next week, Email Geeks. See you then.